I'm shining like a new dime.
As the 1990s dawned, Rod Stewart's musical soul was renewed, and his legendary career graced with new life.
All my dreams fall like rain on a downtown train.
But meanwhile, his 7-year relationship with girlfriend Kelly Emberg was dying.
There had been affairs, and there had been things in the tabloids about things that he had been doing with other women. And he always had a reason, you know, he's like, oh, they just, you know, people are jealous of our relationship. But in the end, he didn't want to get married.
Kelly and I were very close to getting married. You know, I just didn't quite do it. I just needed that little push. But as you know, we didn't marry. Ha.
If he didn't know after a baby in 7 years that we should be together, then I felt that we shouldn't. So that's basically why I left.
Rod was served with a $25 million palimony lawsuit.
It was on the news that I was suing him for $25 million. And I was shocked. I was so upset. I couldn't believe my lawyer would do something like this. It was very vulnerable and emotional, and I had no idea what the complaint said in it.
I think when relationships are broken up, women tend to go for the pocketbook. They know guys don't like it. That's where it hurts.
It wasn't something I ever wanted to do, and never really sued him for that. In the end, you know, I was appalled that even happened.
It was a wonderful relationship, and it should have come to its natural conclusion a bit earlier, probably. But we had a wonderful daughter together, and we're still great mates.
After splitting with Kelly, Rod met supermodel Rachel Hunter in the summer of 1990.
But when I first met him, actually, I was just, God, how old was I? I was 20.
She was doing a Sports Illustrated video. It was being played on CNN all the time, and then one night I bumped into her on Sunset Strip.
He just came up and put his face right in front of mine and made some odd comment, and I just started laughing, and then he just was imitating this exercise video that I'd just done for Sports Illustrated.
I wouldn't say it was love at first sight, but she is, you know, still is a stunning woman.
Soon, Rod and Rachel were serious about each other.
On hindsight, I wish somebody had said, look, she's far too young, which she, of course she was. She was only like 21, and I was 45 at the time, I think. Having met what I thought was going to be the love of my life, and, you know, my dad had gone.
That September, Rod's beloved father passed away from a heart attack.
His dad actually died on my birthday, which was very, very strange as well, and I was with him when he actually found out that news.
I rang Roddy, and I said to him that, you know, Dad had just died, and he just banged the phone down. He just couldn't believe it.
It was a magnificent funeral, my dad's. The whole of Highgate stopped. Everybody just stood in the street because they all knew him so well. He was a great man, lovely man. I didn't really mourn his death until probably about a year later because I'd met Rachel, so I was emotionally really confused.
He asked me to marry him, and I was like, okay, let's do it. And 3 months later, I was married.
Rachel became the second Mrs. Stewart on December 15th, 1990.
My sister only told me recently, she said, you know, when that wedding was going on, as much as we all loved Rachel, she said, I leant across and said to your brother or somebody, you know, that girl's going to break his heart one day. And I said, why'd you tell me?
The next spring, Love was the inspiration for Vagabond Heart. Dedicated to Rod's late father, the album was a top 10 smash. 45-year-old Rod Stewart was still at the top of his game.
Being at your peak now as a vocalist, is that luck or is that work?
That would be a lot of hard work. The only luck that would come into it is I've looked after it. You know, I've got no polyps, I've got no terrible disease of the throat, as far as I know, anyways.
You ready?
Though Rod battled laryngitis on the Vagabond Heart Tour, it was an otherwise upbeat time for him. In the summer of '92, he and Rachel had their first child, daughter Renee.
These are my girls. This is 2 of the 3 girls I have, and 2 of the 5 children of the last count I possess.
Rod's children found the years had not dimmed their father's sense of humor.
He had high heels on and this little skirt and a wig, and he came in and I was sitting on my bed crying, and I started laughing.
My favorite part of my dad is his humor. Like whenever you're sad or you're down, he like always cheers you up. You couldn't ask for a better dad than my dad, seriously. And I'm not just saying that because the camera's on.
The cameras were on in early '93 when Rod reunited with his old pal Ron Wood for a performance on MTV's Unplugged.
And we haven't done this together since we recorded it 22 years ago. Most of the band weren't born. My wife was only one.
If I listened long enough to you.
I mean, to see him and Ronnie up there is just like, you know, seeing two brothers together.
Still I look to find a reason to believe.
And it just really came across as a very warm, fun evening.
Have I told you lately that I love you?
That is the one time when I got very emotional when I sung Have I Told You Lately, because I was so wonderfully in love with Rachel. And I just broke down at the end of that one. And people would ask me, was it genuine? It was absolutely genuine.
Ease my troubles, that's what you do.
The album he recorded that night went to #2 on the charts. But the year's bigger honor came when Rod was voted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
I thought it was going to take me another 10 years before I got invited in, you know, but unfortunately we had the earthquake, and it was a horrible experience.
3 days before the Hall of Fame induction ceremony, Los Angeles was rocked by a devastating earthquake.
I had just found out, too, that I was pregnant with Liam. And we had had the earthquake that night. We were literally thrown all the way across the hallways into the house in Renee's room. He literally grabbed her feet and just yanked her out of the crib.
I remember looking out from this house and looking over California and seeing, like, all the lights had gone out, and I thought, bloody hell, we're the only ones alive.
He was just like two minds, you know. It was like protection over the family as well as, that's a huge honor.
I couldn't go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The kids were just too scared, I couldn't leave them.
On January 19th, Rod was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame by Jeff Beck.
He said, Rod and I have a love-hate relationship. He loves me and I hate him. Thanks, Jeff.
To cap off a great year, Rachel and Rod's second child, Liam, was born. As the millennium came to a close, Rod seemed to have found a perfect balance between life as a family man and a rock star. But in January of '99, his young wife stunned him by walking out on their 9-year marriage.
It was pretty instant. I mean, I moved out. And I think it has a lot to do with me being very, very young when we first met. And I had a lot of growing up to do.
I wasn't equipped for it. So I just literally fell to pieces. I lost tons of weight.
He didn't have any past experience to lean on and know that he was going to be all right.
Everything became like you were in a dream. Nothing was real. I go and play football, and it was like everybody else were ghosts. It's the weirdest, surreal is the word I'm looking for, surreal.
Coming up, Rod battles cancer with his voice in the balance.
I'd always be able to sing, you know, and suddenly it wasn't there. It was really, really frightening.
When Behind the Music continues.
People get ready.
Behind the Music is sponsored